We've probably all been there. You're sitting in the office, standing on a construction site, or waiting outside the classroom. Then you get a text message from a colleague or classmate. "I'll be a little late today." No big deal, and for most of us, just a side note. But in the case we're discussing today, it's precisely such a text message that marks the beginning of a mysterious case that only unfolded last year. This has been happening on and off lately. Each time, the colleague showed up at work an hour late, as promised. But on March 26th, 2024, things are different. Christina Ace writes twice to say she'll be a little late, but she doesn't show up for work at all that day. More than a year has passed since then, and there's still no sign of Christina.
And back in April, a woman went missing as she headed to her job in West Lynn, never to be seen again.
The police report also indicates that Ace misled her employer and her husband on 3 other recent occasions.
Christina Ace works at the Roselyn Care Center in West Lynn, a nursing home for assisted living. The nursing home is located in a small town in the U.S. state of Oregon, just outside the capital, Portland. Christina used to have a completely different job. The 61-year-old is Argentinian and worked as a biochemist in her home country. In the mid-2000s, however, Christina moved to the U.S. and started all over again. At first, she got by with jobs as a cook. At first, she didn't even speak English, but she persevered, taught herself the new language, and went to college in the US. She became a nurse and then continued her education until she even became a doctor. Christina then found her calling at the Roselyn nursing home. Her colleagues say that she treats the patients as if they were her own family members. Everyone likes the elderly lady and feels well cared for by her. Christina is a nurse through and through. According to her colleagues, she wouldn't hurt a fly. She has now been working at the Roselyn Care Center for 15 years. Many of her colleagues have been there just as long. The team is like a small family. On March 25th, 2024, the day before Christina disappears, she's in a good mood as always. At lunch, she reminds her colleagues that there is a training course the next day. Christina wants to make sure that the whole team will be there and keeps reminding the others about the upcoming course throughout the day. As her resume shows, she's eager to learn and always looks forward to opportunities like this. Christina commutes to work every day from the neighboring state of Washington. Christina lives with her husband Anibal in Vancouver. Not in the Canadian city, but in a small town called Vancouver. It takes her a good half hour to drive to work every day, depending on traffic. On her route, she has to cross the Columbia River and drive through the city of Portland. And of course, there can be traffic jams. Anyone who drives during rush hour knows this all too well. But most days, everything goes according to plan. Christina's Toyota serves her well on her commute. She usually reports for her shift at the nursing home at around 7:30 a.m. On the morning of March 26th, 2024, things are a little different. Christina sends a text message to a colleague at around 7 a.m. She writes that she will be a little late that day. At least that's what another colleague says. Christina apparently wrote that she wouldn't be at work before 8:30 a.m. So, an hour later than usual. She didn't give a reason for her delay, but at least Christina let them know. She always does that if she's going to be late in the morning, whether it's because of a doctor's appointment or a problem with her car. All her colleagues emphasize that Christina is absolutely reliable. That's why they call Christina's husband Anibal when she doesn't show up for work that morning. That's worrying enough as it is. But Christina was really looking forward to the training course and had emphasized the day before that they should all attend together. The fact that she didn't show up for work at all just doesn't add up. Anibal is completely perplexed. His wife didn't mention to him that she was running late or anything like that. Why would she? She left the house at 6:34 a.m. and was well on time to be at the nursing home at 7:30 a.m. Christina didn't tell Anibal about any planned detours on the way. Not only her co-worker, but also Christina's husband himself are immediately very concerned. That same evening, Anibal reports his wife missing. The next day, March 27th, something very mysterious happens. Christina's car turns up, not even a mile from her own home in Vancouver. It is parked on the side of the road as if nothing had ever happened. Inside the car, things look a little different. Some of the surfaces in the car have apparently been meticulously cleaned with a powdery white cleaning agent. In addition, the rearview mirror is slightly twisted. A roll of tape, a green straw, and several strands of human hair are found. The police do not disclose whether these belong to Christina herself or to a second person. Christina's bag, in which she always brings her lunch to work, is also in her car. The food is untouched. No one knows who parked the car in the neighborhood or when. All that is known is that none of this fits Christina Ace at all. And what the police discover next only makes the case even more mysterious. The GPS data from Christina's cell phone makes it possible to trace her route on the morning of March 26th. Of course, the data cannot show whether there was a second person with Christina or how she was feeling during her drive. But we can see relatively accurately when she took which route. So let's go back to the morning of March 26th and follow Christina Ace's last trail. It is 6:34 a.m., a rather unpleasant morning. The temperature is just above freezing, between 1 and 3 degrees Celsius. The light wind that blows through the city from time to time does not make it any better. When Christina leaves the house shortly after 6:30 a.m., dawn is still breaking over the city. Her husband later confirms to the police that Christina left the house around 6:30 a.m. You may already notice something strange here. Christina always arrived at work around 7:30 a.m. The journey usually took her half an hour, in very rare cases 45 minutes. Even if we assume a 45-minute commute that morning, that still leaves a 10-minute window until 7:30 a.m. However, Christina texted a colleague to say she would be late that morning, not arriving before 8:30 a.m. And that despite the fact that she was usually very punctual and even had at least 10, if not 20 minutes to spare. It looks like Christina wanted to run an errand on her way to work. But first, let's go back to the morning of her disappearance. Christina gets into her car and takes Interstate 205 south toward Portland. At 6:47 a.m., Christina turns off Southeast Foster Road and drives through a residential area. There is a park in this residential area called Glenwood Park. Glenwood Park is a large, flat, green space with only a few trees, which are likely to be quite bare at the end of March. There is a large sports field, some playground equipment for children, and a public restroom. But that's about it. At around 7 a.m., shortly after arriving near the park, Christina calls work to say she will be late. Over the next 3 hours, until around 10 a.m., Christina's signal moves back and forth in this area, between the park and one or more houses in the residential area. The police say that the very reliable geographical data points indicate that she was not stationary the whole time, but was probably moving between the park itself and one or more apartments. In a later police report, the officers specifically mentioned the 800 block of Southeast Claiborne Street. At around 10 a.m., the signal moves again, this time to an intersection between Southeast Flavel and 92nd Avenue. The cell phone logs in there for a good 5 minutes before the signal drops. This could be because the cell phone battery simply ran out or because someone manually turned off the cell phone. Christina's trail thus disappears in the residential area near Glenwood Park. The cell phone is never turned on again. You're probably wondering what Christina could have been doing there on that rainy morning. Well, you're not alone. Investigators are still racking their brains over it, because no one can explain what the missing woman could have been doing there. A colleague of Christina's initially says, "I think it's important to emphasize that while Christina's phone or car may have been in that area, those are not places I would ever think Christina would go." The colleague is implying that just because Christina's GPS signal was located in the neighborhood, it doesn't necessarily mean that Christina was actually there. For example, her cell phone may have been taken or stolen earlier that morning. But as is sometimes the case in life, people you think you know well can surprise you. Sometimes they can even lie to you, even if you can't imagine it. And there are several indications that Christina Ace was not entirely honest with those around her. After searching for Christina for several weeks, the police announced that she had deceived her employer and her husband about her whereabouts on at least 2 other occasions. Later, there is even talk of 3 such occasions. According to this, Christina left her home in Vancouver at around 6:30 a.m. on these occasions. Her husband Anibal assumed that she was simply on her way to work. About 20 minutes later, she called her workplace both times to say she would be a little late but would be there by 8:30 a.m. at the latest. Exactly the same as on the day she disappeared. The first time was on February 27th, 2023, or 2024. Both dates appear in the police document, presumably a typo. And then again on March 1st, 2024, and March 5th, 2024. On each of these 3 days, she left her house at around 6:30 a.m. and texted her boss at around 6:50 a.m. to say that she would be arriving at work at 8:30 a.m. instead of 7:30 a.m. This is exactly what happened again on March 26th, except that Christina disappeared on that day. According to the police, it is no longer possible to trace where Christina reported from on these 3 previous occasions. But Southeast Foster Road, which she also took on March 26th, 2024, is about a 15-minute drive from her home. And each time, about 20 minutes after Christina left home, a message arrived saying that she would be late for work. Investigators therefore believe it is likely that Christina drove to the residential area around Glenwood Park at least 3 times early in the morning before her disappearance. On March 5th, Christina wrote to her boss that she had a mammogram appointment at 7:30 a.m. The police naturally checked this with Christina's doctor. Christina did indeed have a mammogram appointment that day, but it was not until 4:30 p.m., so she used the morning appointment as an excuse. However, a colleague told journalists that Christina always had her doctor's appointments at Kaiser Sunnyside Medical Center. And that's only a 5-minute drive from Glenwood Park, which places her in the area. Another co-worker says Christina always made her private doctor's appointments early in the morning to avoid rush hour traffic. However, she's not known to have had a doctor's appointment on any of the other days. Nevertheless, she was in the vicinity of Sunnyside Medical Center 4 times in the morning. The 4th time, she disappeared. It is striking that Christina always wrote in the morning to say she would be late. So it does not appear that these trips to the Glenwood Park area were planned. It is more likely that she drove past on her way to work and decided to stop, for whatever reason. A police report indicates that Christina has not used the joint bank account with her husband since her disappearance. However, the report also states that Christina had 3 credit cards. The report does not mention whether these cards have been used again. Christina's husband Anibal has not yet commented in the media. Neither have several sisters that Christina is believed to have. However, both parties have given their express consent for Christina's colleagues to speak to journalists and draw attention to the case. There have also been a few media reports. But considering how strange the circumstances of Christina's disappearance are, there has been very little attention paid to this case. a physical search for Christina has also been left to volunteers. An advertising agency in Portland has at least donated 7 large search posters at its own expense, which are displayed around the city and contain all the important information about Christina. Colleagues and a few local residents have organized a search by boat in the waters near Christina's usual haunts. In addition, 2 vigils for Christina were held in the month after her disappearance, one of them on April 26th. It is not only the day on which a full month has passed without any trace of Christina, but also her 62nd birthday. But neither the 7 large search posters in Portland nor the media reports have yielded any results. Within a month of her disappearance, not a single clue as to Christina Ace's whereabouts has been reported to the police. The case remains a complete mystery to this day. But there are, of course, several theories. We will now look at 3 of them. Christina's relatives have a theory that they have shared via the United Search Corps organization. They believe that Christina stopped in the area around Glenwood Park to help someone, either a homeless person or someone else. As you probably know, health insurance is not that easy in the US. Even simple treatment can quickly cost a small fortune. Christina is not only a highly trained doctor and an extremely helpful woman, she also knows what it's like to start from scratch. When she came to the US from Argentina, she had nothing, not even language skills. An experience like that shapes you, and perhaps it makes you even more willing to help others. But the issue of homelessness is no coincidence either. There are 2 homeless shelters within walking distance of the park, Path Home and the Portland Homeless Family Solution Center. This would also fit with the theory that Christina had been in the area several times before her disappearance, and also that her cell phone was apparently moving between several houses in the area on the day she disappeared. Perhaps Christina regularly helped 1 or more people with health problems there. And the last time, something went terribly wrong. The traces of cleaning products in her car and the roll of duct tape suggest the worst. On the other hand, it's strange that her car was parked near her home. Assuming that the perpetrator drove the car there, he would have taken a big risk. He could easily have been seen, even by someone who knew Christina personally and would have noticed immediately that something was wrong. There is also some speculation that Christina may have returned to her native Argentina, but that is rather unlikely, even if you disregard the various visits to Glenwood Park and the evidence found in her car. Christina's parents live in Argentina and have not heard from her since she disappeared. What's more, Christina was really looking forward to the training course on the 26th and reminded all her colleagues that they should definitely attend. Christina also drove past Portland Airport in the morning to go to Glenwood Park instead. If she had wanted to leave, she wouldn't have had to make that detour, especially since her car turned up in Vancouver anyway. It just doesn't add up. And the investigators agree. They either believe it was a crime or that Christina may have had a medical emergency. Theoretically, it could be anything. A minor car accident, a sudden stroke, a heart attack, or undiagnosed dementia. But you can see that this theory is purely speculative, especially since there's the matter of her car being cleaned and the fact that it was parked near her home again. That doesn't fit with Christina being confused or out of her mind. Everything points to someone harming Christina Ace on March 26, 2024, and getting away with it to this day. Since the end of October 2024, the FBI has also been involved in the investigation into the Christina Ace case. Unfortunately, that is also the last update available in this case. To date, there is still no trace of the missing woman. The Christina Ace case is really intense, not only because it's so recent, but also because it's relatively unknown. There's something that doesn't add up in every possible scenario. That's why I'd be very interested to read your theories in the comments. The medical assistance on site sounds relatively plausible to me. Nevertheless, the question remains as to why the car was parked near her home. And what could have led someone to harm Christina Ace? Or do you think something completely different happened? I look forward to reading your thoughts. Thank you in advance, because any interaction, whether it's a like or a comment, helps the channel enormously. Other than that, there's not much more to say. I wish you a good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you're watching the video, and hope to see you again in the next video. Until then, ciao everyone.